Hi, I'm Jeff Davis. I hope you enjoy today's tale from my travels on the wine road. Once upon a time in a prosperous kingdom, there ruled a wise and noble king. For many years he governed with a steady hand and a knowing heart. Yet as time passed, he chose to lay down his crown, abdicating his throne to make way for a new ruling family. But alas, the new rulers, though well-intentioned, faltered in their stewardship, and the kingdom found itself in disarray. Seeing his beloved land in need, the old king did not stand idly by. He took up his trusty mug, a chalice of simple but steadfast power, and stepped forth to join the caring new family that had taken up the mantle of leadership. Though no longer a king, Geoffrey House, the founder of Ace Cider, once again relies on his wisdom to guide the land, and his presence remains ever strong in the county of Sonoma.
Well, I mean, that's the reason I wrote the book, because at the pub here on a Friday, I just would be, in inverted commas, entertaining people, and they all said, "You should write a book."
He's Geoffrey House, the founder of Ace Premium Craft Hard Cider. And if you've been an On the Wine Road podcast listener for a while, you've heard him in the past talking about the brand that he and his family have been producing since 1993. California's original hard cidery was among the fastest-growing craft cider brands in the country, producing nearly 90,000 barrels of cider annually. Then he decided to toss the ball away when he sold to Vintage Wine Estates, VWE. And as you may have heard, and will today, that didn't go so well. It certainly made headlines. After the sale, Geoffrey had time to write a book, which is called The Cider King, How I Aced It. Yes, a little immodest, but clever. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, On the Wine Road podcast is brought to you locally by Sonoma Clean Power. For those of you in the area, learn how your actions can make a greater impact with clean, renewable energy at poweringeverydaymoments.org. That's poweringeverydaymoments.org. And now the story of how and why Geoffrey House has returned to the helm at Ace Cider. I was surprised that he and his sons wanted to sell because, it was their baby for nearly 30 years. So when Geoffrey and I hooked up a few weeks ago, I started by asking if they were looking to sell before VWE came along.
We had several propositions from breweries like Sapporo. We had a big French concern, Agrial, who finished up buying Manzana. I referred them to Manzana because I didn't want to sell at that time. That was like 13 years ago when we moved in here. But Vintage Wine Estates was brought to us by a merchant banker called Cowan. And they do a lot of mergers, acquisitions. And we met up with Pat Roney, and he was, or he had been in London, and he did a SPAC where he generated like $700 million, and he went out and started to buy wineries. He was buying them before, but I mean, he had Kunde was one of his wineries, and then
B.R. Cohn.
B.R. Cohn was another one. Clos Pegase he already had, and a few others. And I think he wanted to buy us because he wanted our distribution, because we were a national brand, which was very unusual. And I think he was thinking about coming, he did have a couple of RTDs, which are quite popular these days, drinks, pre-made drinks. And he was doing them as a wine base, and he thought he could come out of his regular wine distributors and come into the beer distribution system that we'd created. I think that was his main thing. He was out here at the Ace facilities here, and we thought, well, let's try you on the ciders, and he took a few sips of them. I don't think he was a huge devotee. I think it was mainly, he saw there was some synergies there that would be good for his company.
Sure, yeah.
And we were quite happy with the whole thing. He was talking about, what we wanted, and I said, I'd love to have a place on the East Coast and cut down on the freight and everything. And, after he purchased us, he went out and a couple of months later, he bought a company called Myers, which was the oldest family-owned winery in Ohio, and we actually did make a little bit of cider back there for a while. But, the whole VWE story I could go on with it might be my second book.
So prior to selling to Vintage Wine Estates, did you decide it was a good time for you to be selling Ace Premium Cider?
Well, yeah, because, as everybody had their experiences with COVID, we thought it was, wow, all our on-premise business basically disappeared. I mean, all the Disneylands and all the bars and restaurants we had across the country is like 40% of our business. I mean, who would have really known, I mean, maybe some people cleverer than I, that we'd have a bumper year, in 2021, and we had the best year ever. And sales shot up just in the off-premise. I mean, we lost 40% in the on-premise, but the off-premise went up proportionately higher, so we did better without the on-premise, if you can believe that, because everybody was drinking at home.
Right.
And I think this was across the board with wine companies, beer, everybody. Mm-hmm. Retail just shot up. And actually now what's happened is, 3 years later, I don't think the on-premise is fully recovered still.
No, they have not, no. And I was thinking that you had just installed that canning machinery in the new production building here, but that was underneath Vintage during their ownership.
Well, that was another reason. I mean, we had to. I didn't want to, but my sons said, listen, Dad, everything's moving towards cans. And I'm going, well, we've got all this $1 million bottle machinery here, and well, we need to buy we had a canning machine. I was sort of forced into that. But we thought we better invest in an even faster canning machine, and that was going to be several $1 million. So my feeling was, well, maybe Vintage could acquire that, and that would, save us some money there. But to answer your question, I mean, it was really, the timing, I'm told, and I believe it probably is, I mean, it was impeccable.
Yeah.
November 2021 was like, there was some talk of the elections, of course, and Biden coming in and changing some of the taxes with the state taxes, and he was going to change some of that that Trump had established. And also the business was getting bigger and bigger, and as business gets bigger, there were more fictitious lawsuits, and there were more. As you get bigger, businesses have more problems.
Sure, yeah. As Vintage has proven.
Yeah. So it was just like, I mean, my three sons, two were in the business. They said, oh no, this is the wrong time to sell. We think cider's going to keep on growing. And it has, just recently it's picked up, and it's actually outperforming beer, which is softened, and even wine.
That surprises me. But yeah, I knew that, this was your baby, and you grew it from the ground up and had great success with it over a good period of time. 93, you started?
We had a very, very long run with not much competition. And then that was another thing. I mean, by the time 2021 came around, Jeff, I mean, I think there were 15 cideries in our own Sonoma backyard, and if you took the whole country, there's 1,000 cideries, and we started off with, woodchuck on the East Coast and a couple of English exporters, so we had 3 or 4 competitors, and then all of a sudden we had thousands of them. So if you took all the combination of those factors, and we got a good offer. I mean, that was the other thing. We got a very good offer. Better than we got from, we had another guy that was in the bidding who was Kopparberg from Sweden, which is the biggest fruit cider company in the world. And he didn't come up with quite the same money that VWE did. So, I think it was a wise decision. Although I did say in the book here, the Cider King, that I wrote, that only time will tell And of course, a lot of things since that that purchase, a lot of changes have occurred, and I'm back here trying to revitalize the brand after it completely collapsed.
When did you start writing the book? Before you sold originally?
I'm trying to think. It took me about a year and a half. I was sort of, I did first of all, I'm not too good on a typewriter or on the computer, but I started handwriting it, and then I started one finger doing it on the phone at night, and I'd wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, I've got to put this chapter in there, and I've got to include this. Probably took me about 6 months or so to actually write it, but it was the proofing and editing that took up all the time. I couldn't believe, it was very, very laborious.
Yeah.
Because everybody makes a mistake or a typo or something. But I had proofreaders look at it. I had the publisher go through it again. So the book took about a year and a half from start to finish.
No, that's not too bad, though. It's not a terribly thick book, though.
Well, that's because they changed the formatting. It was a bit thicker. They put a lot more words on the page, yeah. But wow. No, I could have and maybe should have included a couple of more chapters in it. But
I'm sure it's a good read.
I might be saving that again, I'd say, for the next go-round, which I'm certainly thinking of. I have to make a decision on that as well. If I want to, they say that if you want to be a writer, you've got to do more than one book. So I have to do some more thinking about that.
Is that what you're thinking is your next vocation, is being an author?
Well, I've got to do something, haven't I? Well, yeah. I think
you made some money, though, didn't you?
I did, but I gave a lot of it to my sons who've been traveling the world and living far better than my wife and I. But I don't know. I am told that a lot of people tell me that I just, they're not surprised I'm back here working away. They think that I'll probably always want to work. I'm not sure about that, but as my wife says, I'm a bit unusual in that I do enjoy business. I enjoy, making deals. Very few people, I suppose, are set up that way, but I actually enjoy it.
Jeffrey House, who just mentioned his wife. Angela is the queen to the king of cider. But at one time in a galaxy far, far away, she played the character Brea Tonica in the original Star Wars cantina scene. That's a fact that he's quite proud of. Now that you know he loves aspects of business, it should come as no surprise that Jeffrey has returned to Ace Cider. Details of which are coming up next, after this message from my sponsor.
Sonoma Clean Power is celebrating 10 years of serving Sonoma and Mendocino counties as your local not-for-profit electricity provider. Since 2014, we've saved customers millions of dollars while reducing greenhouse gas emissions, investing in our communities, and bringing energy education to our schools. And we've advocated for grid reliability, climate safety, and increased the number of electric cars and bikes on our roads. We've made progress, and we're not done yet. Join us as we continue to light the way during the next 10 electric years.
Still to come on the Wine Road podcast, Jeffrey House of Ace Cider touches upon his attempt to buy back the brand. He willingly breaches the topic of depression that he suffered with most of his adult life, and you'll hear about the new owners of the Ace brand, R.L. Lipton Distributors. On the topic of VWE's bankruptcy, you could say he saw the writing on the wall.
I already sort of had a premonition that they probably were not going to do that well. And then when we looked at the stock market and we listened to the reports from the Securities and Exchange Commission and found out that they were losing $20 million a quarter, I said to the boys, I said, this can't continue. They're going to run out of money. Perhaps we should buy the business back. And I tried to encourage my sons to do that, and they agreed. But they thought the business probably had deteriorated too far. They'd asked some questions of supermarket buyers and said, no, we haven't been able to get the product for a while because I think March is when VWE of 2024 sort of ran out of money. And then by June, they stopped really production here. So from June through to the actual repurchase in October, there wasn't any real production going on here.
Jeez.
There were empty shelves.
Yeah. VWE purchased the Ace brand in 2021 for 8 figures. When Vintage was required to sell some of its assets during the bankruptcy, Jeffrey and others bid on Ace. He was second to the winning bid from the Lipton family. He came so close to buying it back. Had he succeeded in obtaining ownership at a fraction of the cost he received from the sale, that would have been a gratifying twist. I did wonder what he did with some of the earnings from the sale to Vintage, and I remembered reading he went to Hawaii a while back. Was he looking for a tropical paradise?
Well, I did look at that, and then Lahaina burnt down. Unfortunately, we dodged a bullet there. I did look at a condo on the beach, which would have been nice, and actually I'm now looking at that again, because with all the fire there, the prices have dropped down. In my case, because I said of the estate duties and all the rest of it, and the boys had worked hard in the business and helped me get to, certainly I had a period there where if you recall, I got very depressed. They saw me through that period, and they actually got the canning going, and I had to reward them, so they all got some money. There's a chunk left over, and I've been making donations to my university back in England, Sheffield, where
That's nice.
I'm trying to help with research into depression, talking to some of their scientists, and so that's kind of what I've been doing.
Jeffrey has mentioned his depression to me in the past, but not as detailed as he did the day we met for this interview. I, like some book reviewers, found it notably forthcoming that he was sharing details about his battle with depression.
Some of the reviewers of the book find it quite refreshing that I've been very open about some of my illnesses. I came to America basically from England, from the advertising business, because I was suffering with depression. I thought it's something to do with the British climate, or the lack of positivity over there with strikes and all the rest of it. And I got here, and then every year and a half I'd have a recurrence of a month or so of not feeling too good.
Yeah.
And that started with my Thames America days, importing beer and exporting California wine. Medicine wasn't curing it, and psychotherapy wasn't curing it. I had to have special treatments, and that it's a lifelong thing. Fortunately, I've had very great periods of clarity where I've been very productive in getting the business going, and been lucky when I've not felt well to have either my wife or the controller here or my sons fill in the gap. So I'm very, very lucky, because the business could have gone south several times.
Right, yeah. But kudos to you for being able to build the nation's first nationally distributed cidery in the country.
Well, I think in some ways having depression or manic depression, bipolar phase 2 is what I was diagnosed as having. It's a curse and a benefit. And if you think about, I think in the wine business, there's a lot of creative people, right? But creative people in general, be they comedians or actors or novelists or thespians, there's probably a very high degree of depression and mania.
Yeah.
And in many ways, Jeff, what it does is a positive, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but it does actually sometimes get you to think faster, quicker, and more creatively.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, last year it was reported that the Lipton family purchased Ace by outbidding Jeffrey and other parties. 2 sisters, Reva and Gila, are now running Ace, and their father helped secure the purchase.
Yeah, Mordecai Lipton was the grandson of a gentleman that bought a Budweiser wholesalership in 1960 in Cleveland. And Mordecai actually bought what was the California Cider Company. It's now Ace Cider One for, his daughters. But Gila is a very accomplished 26-year-old lady that is going on 56. I mean, she's remarkably talented.
Very savvy and
very quick, and tells me that maybe I'm wrong, which I sometimes wonder. I said, well, I have done this before, so you may want to listen to some of my advice.
Right. So they brought you back to get production back up and help rebuild sales and administration and to stabilize Ace Cider's operations and rebuild the brand's presence.
Yeah, well, after the VWE demise, and I just thought that, hold on a second, the previous managing director, chief executive officer, was operating from New York. And the Liptons were, out of Cleveland, Ohio. And I thought, well, you probably want somebody on the site because it's a lot of detail. And I just proffered my services and said either as a consultant, and they chose me to come back as general manager, which I've been here 5 months, and we've managed to get the business with the crew here and adding new salespeople, a sales manager, and some of the old staff that we have. I mean, we're back to about 45% of where we were within 5 months. It's not bad.
Not at all. And fortunately, you're still here in Sebastopol, running it where you used to.
Yeah, all the equipment was here, all the same crew was here. I don't know how they lasted through the period of non-production. I thought they would have moved on, but everybody that's crucial, critical to the business is still here.
Jeffrey also pointed out that unlike some of the challenges the alcohol industry is facing right now, the interest in cider is still growing.
Yes, young people are not drinking as much. Maybe they're smoking more marijuana, I don't know. But you know what's really, really interesting? When you look at, there are outlets in America, like 300 of them across the country, which are sort of do-it-yourself type bars. They're called pour-its. You can go in with your credit card and get a pint of beer or a pint of cider. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure I'd do it because I like talking to the bartender or the manager, but there's no waste when they pour. But Gen Z, their first choice is cider. And the ladies that go to these pour-its, the research that they've done, the first drink that they want is cider.
Interesting.
And in our case, it's number one drink is Ace Pineapple, number two is Ace Guava.
Nice.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, I got to go back and buy some shares in the company again. This is
right. Well, that's, I saw my brother this past weekend, and he drinks cider.
Yeah.
He's more of a cider drinker than he is wine, that's for sure.
And I got to tell you that, after 30 years, the one thing we have realized, and if you go to acecider.com and you look at the new web pages that Gila created, some of the comments are just incredible. The loyalty and this is the best cider I've ever had in the world. Thank God for bringing it back. Thank you, you've made my day. We must have done a pretty good job of branding.
Sure. Well, and creating the flavors.
Yeah, and the product, yes. Mm-hmm. I think the sales guys that we have, the new ones have been influenced by the old ones who said, well, first of all you have to do is get the liquid onto people's mouths and they'll buy it. And then the next stage is just get it on the shelf and it'll come off the shelf. It sells. It's a brand.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while. It may take another year or two to get back to where we were when we sold it, but I think it will get back there.
This is the peach that we're drinking now?
No, this is the Perry one which has been
Perry.
around since 1994 and is still probably number 2 or 3 preferred flavor. Number 1 is pineapple. The peach has just rocketed up. Of course, where we've done well with that is in Georgia, of course, and the southeast, the peach states, and
Right.
and we got very, very lucky. When I say that when you run out of product for 100 days or wholesalers are out of stock, you lose your shelf space, it's empty, they fill it with something else. Mm-hmm. We've had success with the peach in Publix, which is a big chain in the southeast, and also with Safeway Albertsons in Arizona. There's 106 stores putting peach and pineapple back on the shelves here in the next month or so.
Excellent. Oh, and good luck with the book. I love the name, The Cider King, How I Aced It.
Yeah. Interesting book, though. It's a story of immigration, big time, a story of business, tips on business, entrepreneurship, plus some encouragement for anyone that suffers with depression.
Very good. Well, you've always been a good raconteur, so.
Raconteur, if I could spell it, yeah.
Yes, you can. Yes, you've always told good stories.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, that's the reason I wrote the book, because at the pub here on a Friday, I just would be, in inverted commas, entertaining people, and they all said, you should write a book. And that's when I thought, well, that's not a bad idea. A lot of people enjoy themselves at both pubs. We've got to open another pub too. VWE decided to close this one, which was...
You had one up at the airport, right?
They were going to, but they screwed that up too.
Oh, geez, yeah.
They didn't make many correct decisions.
Doesn't seem like it.
That could be the next book, if I can get away with it. How to make every mistake in the book.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Sounds like things are going in a positive direction for the King and Queen. Keep your eye on store shelves if you choose to contribute to the resurgence of Ace Premium Craft Hard Cider. And visit acecider.com. You can see photos of Jeffrey and Angela on my website, onthewineroad.com, including one of Angela as Brea Tonica of Star Wars. And look for the book, The Cider King, How I Aced It. Check out my website, onthewineroad.us. I'm on Facebook as On The Wine Road and Instagram as JD Wine Road. If you're on a podcast platform, a positive review is always appreciated. My podcast themes are composed by Marscott. I'll catch you next time on The Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis.